Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay. Now, let's continue from the yesterday's lecture. Yesterday, we have discussed about the stress, strain, different type of stress. What is normally in this lesson we are studying only the direct stresses. And in direct stresses, yesterday I explained you about the tensile stress, compressive stress, when the tensile stress is induced, when the compressive stress is induced, and how to identify whether the induced stress is tensile or compressive. One important thing is that remember the stresses are nothing but the internal resistance force induced in the material per unit cross-sectional area, that is known as a stress. So stresses are always induced, whereas the forces are applied. We always say that the force is applied, but never we say that the stresses are applied. Stresses are always induced because of some external applied forces. Okay, so remember this. Now, today we are going to learn about the stress strain curve for the different material. Yesterday I told you that what is the importance of the stress strain curve. Uh, for any particular material, when we require to know the different mechanical properties, one of the important tests is the tensile test or the compressive test. And when we conduct this tensile test and compressive test, and when we plot the result, normally we are plotting the stress versus strain. And that graph is known as a stress strain curve, which is very important to know the different mechanical properties of the material. This stress strain graph or this tensile test is carried on the universal testing machine. Yesterday I told you about show you the universal testing machine, and then the college will resume. Here will conduct the experiment also on universal testing machine, that is the tensile test as well as compressive test. So how the test is performed and which are the readings we have to take and how to plot the stress strain diagram. And what will be the conclusion or inference from that stress strain diagram? Which important mechanical properties will come to know from that stress strain diagram will come to know. So um, we have to consider, we have to prepare a specimen made of that particular material whose mechanical properties to be checked or find out. This specimen is held in the universal testing machine in its jaws, and with the help of some pneumatic or hydraulic circuit, there is a hydraulic circuit, not pneumatic circuit. By using the hydraulic circuit, we are applying the gradually applied load. The load applied is a gradually applied load, means we are applying the load from zero and we are increasing its magnitude gradually. That is known as a gradually applied load. So slowly we are going to apply the tensile load on this and we'll take the reading. Okay. Now for this specimen, consider this is a specimen. This is the original cross-sectional area. We are going to do all the calculations with respect to the original cross-sectional area. Listen, when we apply the tensile force, the length will increase. There will be elongation. And when there is an elongation, the lateral dimension, that is the diameter, will decrease. And hence, the cross-sectional area will also decrease. But we are going to do all the calculations with this original cross-sectional area. Okay. Now, the length of this specimen under consideration is known as a gauge length. Let's denote it as a L. It is a gauge length. That is the length under consideration. Here, some part goes in the jaws to hold the specimen, and this is the actual part on which we are actual length on which we are applying the force. Here, so this is the gauge length. So all our calculations we are going to do with respect to this original cross-sectional area and this gauge length. Okay. Now, when we apply the tensile force on this specimen by using the universal testing machine, this original length and the cross-sectional area are known to you. Means original diameter is known to you, and with help of that diameter we can calculate the original cross sectional area. This is known. We are applying the axial tensile force and we increase the magnitude of that axial tensile force gradually. Okay. Now when we increase the magnitude of the force P gradually, the length will also increase. Okay. So what we are going to do, what readings we are going to calculate on this universal testing machine. So we are going to consider how much load P is applied. Mostly we are going to take it in kilonewton. What will be the cross-sectional area that is known to you? Okay, every time it is not required, that is the original cross-sectional area. Then corresponding to this force P applied and this original cross-sectional area, we are going to calculate the stress. This stress will be in kilonewton per millimeter square. Let's take that area is in millimeter square. Okay. Then corresponding to this force P, how much is the increase in length? That we are going to calculate. So we are going to calculate the delta L. Corresponding to this force P, how much is the deformation of that rod we are going to calculate actual on this machine. Okay. Then with the help of this delta L, change in length because of this force P, applied force P, and this original length, we can calculate the strain. So this strain equal to delta L upon L. This much reading we have to take from the machine. Actually, we have to take only two readings, how much is the P and how much is the delta L. Before starting the experiment, we have to measure how much is the gauge length and how much is the cross-sectional area. That you have to write and that you have to use to calculate the stress and strain. This actually, for each reading, you have to take only the value of, you have to record only the value of P and the deformation delta L. This value of P and delta L, you can directly get the values from the machine. Okay, on the machine there is a digital scale. On the digital scale, we can calculate we can directly get the reading P and the delta L. Okay, so we are going to increase the force P gradually, and correspondingly, since A is constant, the value of stress also goes on increasing. And from this one, we are going to plot the stress strain diagram. Now, this is the procedure is remains same for any material. Whether you consider the mild steel, whether you consider the cast iron, whether you consider the brass or any other material, the procedure of the tensile test is remains same. Okay, but according to the property of the material, the stress strain graph, the nature of the stress strain graph will be different. Okay, now why the nature? Because of why the nature is different? Because of the properties of that particular material. Now here initially we are going to consider the ductile material, that is the mild steel. Mild steel is a ductile material. Okay, so this is the stress strain diagram for or stress strain curve for ductile material. Like mild steel. Now there are number of materials which are having the ductile property, but all the nature of all the graph for the ductile material is little bit remains same, but the value or the properties will be different. Okay, so here we are going to consider the stress strain curve for the ductile material, and we are going to test here the mild steel. Okay, now you should know these basic mechanical properties. Here in 5 minutes I will tell you the basic mechanical properties also, what is in the ductile material, what is in the brittle material, malleable material. So all these are the mechanical properties which we have to study in the strength of material lab. The first property is the elasticity. I'm going to tell only the important property here. When you will come in the lab, here I will tell you the detail about these different properties. Now what is the elasticity? Elasticity is the property by virtue of which the material elongates. And once we remove the external applied load, if the material regains its original shape and size, okay, then that material is known as the elastic material, and it regains its original shape and size because of this property elasticity. Okay, for example, the rubber, when we apply the force, it elongates. Okay, and when I release that external force, here that deformation get disappear and it come back to its original shape and size. It is because of its elasticity. So elasticity is the property by virtue of which the material regains its original shape and size after removal of the external applied load. Yeah, okay. The next property is the plasticity. plasticity or the material plastic material. Okay, the material which possesses this property plasticity is commonly known as a plastic material. Okay, now what is the plasticity? So it is a property by virtue of which the material do not regain its original shape and size. That property is known as a plasticity. For example, if I consider one plastic material and if I apply the force, tensile or compressive, there will be some deformation. But after removal of the load, that deformation will not get disappear. There will be a permanent state of deformation even after removal of the external load. It is because of this property which is known as a plasticity. Okay. The next important property is the, we can say, hardness. Hardness. Okay. Now, what is the hardness? You must be knowing that the diamond is the hardest material. Okay. When we purchase the mobile glass, what we can say, that cover glass. Okay. Screen protector. Okay, when we purchase that screen protector, here on that it is written that hardness 6H, 9H, and all that things. Okay, there are different units for the hardness. It is a Brinell hardness number and all these things here. But when you purchase the screen guard, here there it is written as 6H, 9H, and all these things. Okay, so that is the hardness. Okay. Now, what is the hardness? How can you define the hardness? So remember, hardness is the property of a material by virtue of which the material resists the scratch. It resists the scratch. We have screen protector. If it is more hardened, okay, so there won't be any scratch on that glass because it is hard. Okay, and by doing some process on that glass, here we can change the hardness. Similarly, for any different metals also, by using the different heat treatment process, hardness can be changed. Okay, so hardness is a resistance to the scratch. In other words, I can say that the hardness is a resistance to the indentation. If the material is hard, okay, if the material is hard, and if I try to indent something on that, if I take the sharp object and if I apply the force, if it is a soft material, easily I can indent in that one. But if it is a hard material, it is difficult to do that indentation. Okay, so it is hardness is a property by virtue of which the material resists the scratch and indentation. Okay, diamond is supposed to be the most hardest material. Okay, for example, this chalk here, the material with the help of which that chalk is made up here is not that much hard. Easily I can scratch on this. Here that scratch is easily visible. Easily I can indent something on this chalk. If I take this and if I apply the force, easily I can make the indentation. Okay. Also we can say that the material which is hard, its wear and tear rate is less. Okay. So it is also the resistance to the wear and tear. So where if we use the material where there is a two parts are in contact and when they are having the relative motion, okay, there may be possibility of the wear and tear. For such type of material, it is expected that the material should be hard so that the rate of wear and tear should be very less. Here, so if the hardness is more, the rate of wear and tear is less. If the hardness is less, the rate of wear and tear will be more. Okay, so hardness is a resistance to the scratch and indentation, or it is resistance to the wear and tear. That is known as a hardness. So diamond is the hardest material, and the talcum is also one of the material. Okay, with the help of which we can make the talcum powder. So that talcum is supposed to be the most softest material. Okay. Then next property is the toughness. Toughness. Hardness is different, toughness is different. Hardness is a resistance to the wear and tear, resistance to the scratch. Whereas toughness is a property by virtue of which the material, or it is the ability of the material to absorb the energy. That is known as a toughness. Okay. Here, when we use some glass for the partitions and all these things in the mall, you must have also that the glass is used for the partitions. So that glass is a toughened glass. That glass is not a hard glass. There is a hardness something, but it is not a hard, it is a toughened glass. Okay. Then what is the property of that toughened glass? If you apply some impact load, on that, it will not break because of this property toughness. Because if your impact load, it possesses some kinetic energy here, and if the material is more tough, it has the ability to absorb that energy. That is known as the toughness. Okay, so it is the ability of the material to absorb the energy. Okay, if some one bodybuilder person is there, and if we punch him, okay, he can easily sustain that punch, because when we punch somebody, it possesses the kinetic energy. Okay, so he can easily sustain that punch. Why? Because he has that ability to sustain that energy or to absorb that energy. Here, so we normally say that are a very tough person. He is a very tough person. Okay, so toughness is what? It is the ability of the material to absorb the energy. That is known as the toughness. Okay, now coming to this ductility. Ductility. So ductility is a property by virtue of which the material can elongate without failure. Okay, ductility is a property by virtue of which the material can be produced in the form of thin wire under the action of tensile force. Okay, so whenever the material is ductile material, here under the action of tensile force, here it will elongate. Okay, so it is because of ductility, and because of the ductility, we can produce the thin wires. Here, so aluminum, gold, silver, these are the very ductile material. Okay, the next property is the malleability. Okay, what is the malleability? Malleability is the property by virtue of which we can produce the thin sheets by applying the compressive force. Okay, in ductility also there is a considerable deformation. In malleable material also there is a considered deformation, but in ductility the deformation is under the tensile load, whereas in malleability the deformation is under the action of compressive force. Okay, so the malleable material is gold, is a very malleable material. We can produce a thin sheet from the gold by applying the compressive force on that. So this is the malleability here. And last important property is the brittleness. I am writing it near to the ductility. Brittleness. Okay, or brittle material. Now, what is the brittleness? In simple word, we can say that the brittleness is a lack of ductility. Okay, brittleness is a lack of ductility. Means brittleness is a property by virtue of which the material will not elongate. It will not show the considerable elongation under the action of external force. Before showing the elongation, it will fail because of that brittleness. Okay, so lack of ductility is known as a brittleness. So these are the different mechanical properties of the material here, which we are going to test in our lab. Okay, in this subject here, and that's why the lab of this subject is known as a material testing lab. Here it is not a strength of material lab, it is a material testing lab. Okay, in which we are going to test all these different property by using the different machines and different procedure. Okay, so come back to this stress strain curve for the ductile material. The example is the mild steel. You can test any other material also. Okay, so consider this mild steel. I have folded it in the universal testing machine and measure the original area, measure the gauge length, and now I am applying the gradual applied tensile load on this material. Okay, slowly I am going to increase this force P, and simultaneously I am going to calculate the stress and measure the elongation also. This P and elongation I can measure directly from this machine. Here there are some sensors and digital machine is there, so easily we can measure force P and the delta. Okay, even if there is a very small change, that also we can record because it is a digital machine. Okay, now when the force is applied, now what happens in this, we are going to apply the force P continuously and gradually until the material will break. Okay, here, so there will be number of readings, 100 readings will be there. Here, corresponding to that, you will get the 100 values of the stress. Corresponding to that, you will get the 100 values of the deformation, and you can calculate the value of E, delta L upon L. Okay. Now, what will happen in stress strain curve? Initially, up to certain limit, after completing this experimentation, you will observe that up to certain limit, okay, on this x-axis, sorry, on the y-axis, there is a value of stress. On the x-axis, there is a value of strain. Okay, we are going to plot the stress versus strain. Now, up to certain limit, here the stress is directly proportional to the strain. Okay, and it will be the straight line because stress is directly proportional to the strain. After completing this experiment, if I plot the graph here, so I'll observe that up to certain limit, the stress is directly proportional to the strain, and let that point up to which the stress is directly proportional to the strain is known as the proportional limit. It is known as proportional limit. Okay, so what is the proportional limit? It is that value of the stress up to which the stress is directly proportional to the strain. Okay, and coming to that, here with respect to that only I am going to explain you about the Hooke's law. Okay, but let's continue. Okay, so up to certain limit, the stress is directly proportional to the strain, and the material obeys the Hooke's law. What is the Hooke's law? I will tell you later. So this value of the stress up to which the stress is proportional to the strain is known as a proportional limit. After that, if I apply the value of the force P and the corresponding value of the stress, here you will observe that this graph is slightly deviate. The stress won't be proportional to the strain, and at very close to the A, very close, here you will get one point, and that point is known as the elastic limit. Elastic limit. Okay, so what is that elastic limit? Up to this elastic limit, then I'll say that limit means the corresponding value of the stress. Okay, so up to this elastic limit, up to this value of the stress, the material is in the elastic zone. Means corresponding to this value of the stress, if I remove the load, the material regains its original shape and size. There won't be any permanent state of deformation. Okay, जब तक वहां पे फोर्स है वो elongate होगा, and once we remove the force, it will come back to its original shape and size. Okay, means the material is in the elastic zone. There won't be any permanent state of deformation. So that limit is known as the elastic limit. What is the importance of this? I will tell you later. Okay, so this is the elastic limit. Now after this, if I apply the force, the material enters in the plastic zone. Okay, materials enter in the plastic zone, and after this value of the force P or after this value of the induced stress, here there will be some permanent state of deformation. After this value of the stress, if I remove the external applied load, here the material will not regain its original shape and size. There will be some permanent state of deformation. Okay, here, so the material enters in the plastic zone. Here, again, if I go on increasing the value of the force P, I will get here the point C. This point C is known as the upper yield point. Upper yield point. Now, what happened at the upper yield point? At the upper yield point, the yielding start. Okay, yielding start means what? There is, you will observe that at the from the upper yield point, the yielding start means there is a continuous deformation, there is a continuous increase in the elongation without increase or much increase in the force P. Okay, that process is known as a yielding. Means by applying the force, by keeping the force constant, also there is some elongation. That process is known as a yielding. Okay, and this yielding process takes place only in ductile material. Only ductile material shows the yielding. Okay, so this is the upper yield point where the yielding starts. So remember this terminology, yielding. Yielding means what? There is a increase in the strain without increase in the stress. In a technical language. Okay, there is an increase in strain without increasing the stress. That is known as the yielding. Okay, to understand this word yielding, it means that what happened at that state, without increasing the load, there is a continuous increase in the deformation. That process is known as the yielding. Okay, here, so from this C, here the material shows the yielding here, and this D is the lower yield point. Lower yield point. D is known as the lower yield point, and this is the yielding. It may remain horizontal or it may slightly come down. Okay, so here from C to D, if I show the exaggerated value, from C to D, you will observe that there is a considerable increase in the strain here, whereas there is no increase in the stress. Means without increasing the force, here the material gets elongated, so this process is known as the yielding process. Now at point D, the material regains the strength. At point D, again the material regains the strength because of the strain hardening. Here, because of this yielding process, there is a strain hardening. Strain hardening is one process. Here it is we can say it is similar to the heat treatment process, which is known as a strain hardening. And because of the strain hardening, here the material again regains the strength at the lower yield point. Ductile material again regain the strain at the lower yield point, and after that it again starts taking the load. Then the stress value goes on increasing. Okay, at this point, okay, at which there is a maximum load on the material. This is the maximum load taken by the material, or this is the maximum load during the experimentation. Okay, and corresponding to that maximum load, जो stress रहेगा, that stress is known as the ultimate stress. So this E is the ultimate limit, or it is the ultimate stress or maximum stress. Ultimate limit or stress. Okay, here this limit means nothing but the corresponding value of the stress. So this is the ultimate stress, this is the yield stress. Okay, this is the upper yield point, lower yield point, and upper yield point. Consider this as a yield stress here. So this is the yield stress, sorry, sigma. This is the yield stress, this is the ultimate stress, or it is also known as a maximum stress. It is one and the same thing, ultimate or maximum. Okay, this is the maximum load during the experimentation. Here, this is the maximum load taken by that material. Okay, now what happens at this maximum stress or at this ultimate limit? Here, the neck formation start. क्या होता है ये डक्टाइल मटेरियल में क्या होता है? नेक फॉर्मेशन स्टार्ट होता है. यार ये इमीडिएटली एट मैक्सिमम लोड ये इमीडिएटली ब्रेक नहीं होता है. ओके, डक्टाइल मटेरियल वोंट ब्रेक डायरेक्टली. यार देयर इज अ elongation, then there is a neck formation. So neck formation will take place at the ultimate limit. So this is the original rod. So at this ultimate limit, what happens? There is a neck formation. Here at one particular position, there is a reduced cross-sectional area. It is known as a neck formation. So neck formation starts here at the maximum stress, at the ultimate limit. Okay, and after that, if I apply the load, here load won't increase. After that, here and load, in fact, the stress value goes on decreasing because we are calculating the stress on the basis of the original cross-sectional area. Okay, so at the end, the material will fail. Here after the ultimate stress, here after there is a deformation, okay, and the material will fail. Here, now when the material fails at this point F, it fails in the form of cup and cone arrangement. Here I will show you. Listen, this is a specimen. You will observe that here there is a neck formation. Here cross-sectional area reduced, there is a neck formation, and ultimately it failed. Now when it failed, here at one end there is a cup formation, ऐसा cup form होता है. Okay, here when it failed, when ductile material fail at one end, here there is a cup formation. and show some exaggerated figure. Such type of cup formation is there. First cross-sectional area radius, and then there is a cup formation. Okay. Whereas at other end there is a formation of cone. Okay. At the other end there is a cone formation. Okay, so this arrangement is known as a cup and cone failure. So ductile material shows such type of cup and cone failure type. Okay, this failure takes place at the point F and it is known as a failure point. F is the failure point. Here, ultimate stress, yield stress, elastic limit, and proportional limit. Okay, so these limits, these values are important. These corresponding stress values are important. By using this different stress value, if this material, suppose if I consider this mild steel, here if I made some component by using this mild steel, I should know the properties of that mild steel. Which property? I should know what should be the ultimate stress. Kitna ultimate stress sustain karega ye. Okay, what will be the yield stress? How much yield stress it will sustain? Here, for this material, how much is the proportional limit? This corresponding value of stress. What will be the elastic limit for this particular material? So these are some mechanical properties which one should know to design this any component made of this material. Okay. Now, why these properties are important? Yeah. Why? What is the elastic property or proportional limit?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Is there any such engineering graph or a true graph in this?
Yes. This graph what we are plotting based on this original cross-sectional area is known as the engineering graph. This is the engineering stress strain graph which we are using. Okay, here. But if we plot the graph here, if we measure this P and if we plot the graph and we calculate the value of stress on the basis of this radius cross-sectional area. Okay, if we plot the graph based on the radius cross-sectional area, we have plotted this graph, we have calculated the stress values on the basis of this original cross-sectional area. But if the stress value is calculated on the basis of the radius cross-sectional area, because cross-sectional area goes on decreasing. So if we calculate the stress value based on this radius cross-sectional area, and if we plot the stress strain graph here based on the radius cross-sectional area, the stress strain graph will be like this. This is known as the actual stress strain graph. Okay, whereas this is the engineering stress strain graph. If I calculate the value of stress based on here, because the cross-sectional area decreases from this point, net formation takes place here. Okay, so till this the graph is little bit similar, but after that there is a variation.
Why is it so that we use engineering stress strain graph for calculation?
Normally it is very difficult to measure this radius cross-sectional area. Okay, it is very difficult to measure that radius cross-sectional area. Every time to check that radius cross-sectional area is difficult. That's why we are using this engineering stress strain curve based on the original cross-sectional area, because all the calculations are based on the original dimensions only. As well as when we design a component here, for that we require to designing any component means calculation of this cross-sectional area or length and all these things here. So we have to use the property based on that original cross-sectional area only. Okay, so we have to use this engineering stress strain curve, not this actual stress strain curve based on the radius area. Okay. Oh, coming to the point, this cup and cone arrangement that I explained. Now I'm going to explain you what is the before that, yeah. What is the Hooke's law? What is the Hooke's law? Here, after plotting this stress strain graph, you will observe that up to certain limit or up to proportional limit, the stress is directly proportional to the strain. Okay, so this Hooke's is a scientist who observed this, and Hooke's law states that here in stress strain graph, here up to certain limit, the stress is directly proportional to the strain. Okay, Hooke's law states that up to proportional limit, the stress is directly proportional to the strain. Here, if I replace this proportionality sign by the equality sign, let's introduce one constant of proportionality, and that constant of proportionality is known as the modulus of elasticity. Okay, so this is again one of the property of the material, modulus of elasticity. Okay, so this modulus of elasticity can be defined as within proportional limit, because this everything is valid within proportional limit only. Okay, so modulus of elasticity can be defined as the ratio of stress to the strain within proportional limit. Here, or within proportional limit, the ratio of stress to the strain is known as the modulus of elasticity. Here, in this stress strain graph, here by taking any value of the stress, here suppose this is the ultimate stress, and corresponding value of the strain, let it is suppose E dash. Here, this value of stress to the corresponding value of the strain, this won't give you the modulus of elasticity. Okay, here, so here in the last column, if I calculate E equal to stress upon strain, but this formula is valid only up to proportional limit. After that, this formula is not valid. Okay, means by taking any value of the stress to the corresponding value of the strain, you won't get the modulus of elasticity. This value of stress and strain should be within elastic limit, because this formula is valid only within elastic limit. Okay, so Hooke's law is what? Within proportional limit, the stress is proportional to the strain. Constant of proportionality is known as the modulus of elasticity. And how can we define the modulus of elasticity? Same thing. Here, the modulus of elasticity is the property of the material, and within elastic limit, the ratio of stress to the strain is known as the modulus of elasticity. This is the way we can calculate the modulus of elasticity, and this is one of the very important property of the material. Okay, here now coming to this stress strain graph, here whenever it is asked to explain the stress strain graph, here plot the stress strain graph and explain all these things. What is proportional limit? What is elastic limit? Don't write story, write the point wise. What is proportional limit? What is elastic limit? What is upper yield point, lower yield point, ultimate stress, and all these things that you have to explain. Okay. Now, how to calculate this ultimate stress? Here, if I want to explain you in terms of formulas, yeah. So this ultimate stress equal to the maximum load during the experimentation upon original cross-sectional area. Okay, how can we calculate the yield stress? Yield stress here, so it is the load at the yielding point, where the low yielding start. Here, the load at a particular yielding point upon the original cross-sectional area gives you the yield stress. Okay, and then if you want to calculate the stress within proportional limit or elastic limit, here, so corresponding load upon corresponding area. Area is the same here, but the load at that particular point divided by original area, you get the load at that particular force. Okay, these two are important, ultimate stress and the yield stress. Here, then proportional limit. Here, or the stress at the proportional limit is equal to the load at the proportional limit upon the original cross-sectional area. Okay, what is the elastic limit? Load at the elastic limit divided by original cross-sectional area. In this way, we can calculate this proportional stress, proportional limit, elastic limit, and yield stress and the ultimate stress. Okay. Then why it is important? What is the importance of this? Here, remember one thing. Whenever you want to design any component, here particularly in mechanical engineering or even in civil engineering also, when I say that if any material fail or any component fail, it doesn't mean that it breaks into two parts. Here, ये beam fail हो गया. Fail हो गया doesn't mean that कि ये दो part में break हो गया और ये building गिर गया. Okay, in mechanical or civil engineering, failure means what? Failure of any component means what? Here, so remember, in mechanical engineering, failure of any component means whenever that particular component does not work satisfactorily, we can say that it is failed. Okay, for example, if you consider the bearing of a fan, okay, this is our day-to-day example. Yeah, electrician, when our fans doesn't work properly, where it rotates slowly, or sometimes it makes the noise. Here, then electrician comes and he says, "Sir, iska bearing there hai." So when we change the bearing, we insert the new bearing. Yeah, and we observe that old bearing. Here, you will observe that there won't be any failure. Either be crack nahi hai, कि कोई ball crack nahi hai, कुछ नहीं है. And failure means what? Why we say that it is fail? Yeah, so failure means it doesn't work properly. Here, it doesn't work satisfactorily, so we can say that it is failed. So in mechanical engineering also, failure means when the part does not work satisfactorily, we can say that it is failed. Now there are number of factors for the failure of that particular component. If you consider this bearing from the fan, there is a wear and tear, which is the major factor. Here, so because of the wear and tear, here it does not work satisfactorily. In some of the case, here there is a uneven expansion or uneven contraction of some particular component. Because of that expansion or contraction, also the component does not work satisfactorily in some of the examples. Yeah, so we can say that it is failed. Yeah, so for that, whenever we design any component, here I already told you that designing means calculation of the cross-sectional area, calculation of the dimensions, that is known as a design. Here, and simple basic formula for design is here stress equal to external applied force P upon area. Here, so for that particular component, जो भी component आपको design करने का है, here जो भी cross-sectional area आपको design करने का है, for that particular cross-sectional area, you have to estimate. Here, being as an engineer, you have to estimate how much approximate load is coming on that particular component during its service life. Here, how much is the maximum load coming on that particular component during its service life, that you have to estimate. This is not the given data, that you have to estimate. Here, by observing the functioning of that particular component, where that component is supposed to be used, depending on that, you have to estimate how much is the maximum load is coming on that particular component during its service life, service period. So this you can estimate, and the stress value for that particular material, here you can get it by conducting this experimentation, by conducting this test here. So if you know this stress here and if you know this force P, you can calculate this area. Yeah, but the question is कि सर कौन सा स्ट्रेस लेने का, इसमें से तो बहुत सारे टेस्ट स्ट्रेस है, तो इसका वैल्यू तो चेंज हो रहा है. So for designing any component, which stress we should take here, whether it is ultimate stress or which one here. So remember one thing, after this B point, after this elastic limit, here actually in actual practice this both the limits are very close to each other here. So after this elastic limit, the material enters in the plastic zone. Okay, means by taking this value of the stress, if I design this here, the area stress value, if I increase, the value of area will decrease. Okay, if I take this value, the stress value increase and hence the area will decrease, because the P we have estimated, which is remain constant. It is the maximum force P. Okay. Now, if I take the value of the stress beyond this elastic limit, in that case, here if I apply the load, the material will elongate. If I apply this much load, the material will elongate and it enters in the elastic zone, sorry, plastic zone. And once it enters in the plastic zone, and even if we remove that load, here that permanent deformation will not disappear. There will be the permanent set of deformation, and because of that permanent set of deformation, material will not work satisfactorily. Okay, that's why whenever you want to design any component, this stress which we are going to consider should be always within this proportional limit. It should be always within this proportional limit. Okay, here we don't have to use all these things. Here we can use any value within this proportional limit, depending on that. particular application. I'm coming to that point also. Okay, so you have to select any value within this proportional limit so that when the force is applied, there will be the deformation, and once the force removed, the deformation disappear and the material or the component come back to its original shape and size. Okay, that's why whenever we design any component, this stress should be always within the elastic limit, and that stress which we are using for designing the component is known as a design stress, or it is known as a working stress, or it is known as a safe stress. Okay, design stress, working stress, or the safe stress. Here, the value of this design stress, working stress, and safe stress should be always within the elastic limit. It should not go beyond elastic limit. Understood this? Now there are some criteria on what basis we can decide this design stress, working stress, or safe stress. You may say that sir, इसमें तो कहीं पे भी दिख ही नहीं रहा है. Where is the design stress, working stress? So you have to decide, but this value should be always within the elastic limit. Okay, here, and that's why to decide this design stress, working stress, or safe stress, one factor we are using, that is known as a factor of safety. Factor of safety. Okay, then before explaining this factor of safety, for the why it is required to consider this working stress, design stress, or safe stress, what will happen? Considering this stress whose value is within elastic limit, let's consider for that one, I have considered this value of the stress. I have considered this value of the stress for designing that particular component. To calculation of this area, I have considered this stress here, and I have estimated this value of force P, maximum value during its service life. ये मैंने estimate किया. It is also the maximum लिया मैंने. Okay, but what happened during its service life? It may happen that accidentally the load may increase beyond this estimation. Here, for example, a bike. Here, the designer or that company says that the bike is designed only for 2 people. Okay, components are designed considering the weight of each man is 100 kg. All the components are designed for 200 kg. Okay, but sometime it may happen that means by considering that 200 kg, the stresses induced in the material will be this value. Yeah, जो estimated maximum load है उससे जो stress induce होगा, that is the design stress, working stress, or safe stress. Yeah, let's consider this value. But normally we observe that even though it is expressed that, or it is in manual it is given that the bike is designed only for 2 people. Here we sit 3 people, we sit sometimes 4. Okay, then also the bike will not fail. The reason is that even if we apply the more load, it happens accidentally. Even if we apply the more load, यार अगर ये increase होता है, the area remains same, that is the design area. यार अगर accidentally अगर P increase होता है, तो stress value will also increase. And if the stress value increase, यार ये design था, अगर ज्यादा accidentally load apply किया, तो stress value will increase. And stress value increase तो ये यहाँ से यहाँ तक जाएगा. Then also it is within the elastic limit. Understood? यार failure तो सब यहाँ पे failure होगा, ductile material यहाँ पे failure consider करेंगे, यहाँ पे तो नहीं, ये तो बहुत लंबा है. Here we are considering the failure of the ductile material is at the yield stress. Here, so when this was the working stress, by accidentally if I apply the more force, this stress value goes here, it will increase slightly, but that also within the elastic limit, and that's why it won't fail. Okay, so if you consider the example of bike, which is normally designed for the 2 people, even if you seat 3 people, it won't fail directly. Here, same thing for the building. Here, building structure designed for the 3 floors or 4 floors according to the design. Okay, here, but sometimes it may happen that one illegal floor, here builder builds one illegal floor. So वो illegal floor construct करने से here building collapse नहीं हो जाएगा. Here it may enter in the risk zone. Here, but immediately it won't fail. Here, that's why this design stress or working stress should be always within the elastic limit. And to decide this design stress, working stress, and safe stress, you should know all these values of the stresses, as well as you should know this factor, which is known as the factor of safety. Okay. Now, what is this factor of safety? It is one factor. It is one number. here, because of which the design engineer keep himself away from the failure. Okay, here the design engineer keep himself away from the accident or failure. That factor is known as the factor of safety. Okay, now factor of safety is different for the different application. Here, initially, I will explain you how to decide the factor of safety. Here, what is the formula for the factor of safety? Yeah. So, factor of safety for the ductile material. Here, the factor of safety is defined as it is the stress at the yield point or the yield stress. It is the yield stress upon working stress or design stress. Working stress or design stress. Okay. Factor of safety is stress at the yield point. Sorry, it is the stress at yield point or yield stress upon working stress to the design stress. Clear? Suppose this factor here, this yield stress you can get from the experimentation. Here in for that particular material, here जो manufacturer का catalog रहेगा उसमें भी ये value रहेगा. Here because manufacturer will conduct the experiment and for that particular material he provide that catalog what are the different properties of that material. So yield stress you can get from that experimentation or from the catalog you will get it. This factor of safety has to be decided. This is the formula, but from the formula you won't get a factor of safety. In actual design, the design engineer has to decide the factor of safety. Here it is a number. Here normal for the normal component it is 1.5 and it goes on increase. Yeah. So this design engineer has to decide the factor of safety which depends on the number of factors again. Yeah. So once the factor of safety is known to you, yield stress you will get it from the catalog. From that one we can calculate the working stress and design stress. Then you have to cross check this working stress and design stress should be always within the elastic limit. And by using this design stress or working stress here this is the estimated load. From that one you can calculate the force P. Sorry, from that one you can calculate the cross-sectional area. Okay. Now, which are the factor on which this factor of safety is depend? Here, what will happen if I take 1.5, 2, 2.5 here? Listen, factor of safety जितना ज़्यादा होगा, उतना working stress will be less. और जितना working stress कम होगा, उतना cross-sectional area will be bigger. Okay, means जितना factor of safety ज़्यादा रहेगा, the material or that component here will become heavier. Here it will be more stronger. Here, so if you want a material to be more stronger, you have to use factor of safety to be more. Here, in common application, the factor of safety is 1.5. Here, where there is a more, if the failure takes place, unfortunately, if the failure takes place, here, and because of that failure, if there is more losses are there, here financial loss, here there are some casualties, here. So if it happen, here, then the factor of safety should be more. Here normally for railways tracks, here component of the train, here for the bridge, here the factor of safety varies from 10 to 20 sometimes. For the bridges it varies from 10 to 20. Here because it should be more stronger, there should not be any failure. If it fails, here there may be the may be the losses of some financial losses will be there, some casualties will be there. Here, for example, the crane hook, which is the hook which is used for the crane. Here, for this crane hook, again the factor of safety is more because if it fails, here lot of losses will be there. Okay. Here, when we use the more factor of safety, the component will be stronger, but there will be the more material consumptions. Here, material will be more. Okay, and if the factor of safety is less, here the less material is required. Here, in that case, the cross-sectional area will be less, so less material is required. Okay, if the component is not that important, here, for example, this bench. If I want to design the this leg dimension for this leg of the bench. Here, I will not take the factor of safety as 10 or 20. Here, even if it fails, here there won't be any, there is no possibility of the casualty. Here, if component fail हो जाएगा, which I can repair, which I can replace. Clear? But there won't be any more financial loss or some casualties are there. Clear? So this is all about the factor of safety. Clear? Now we'll stop here. Tomorrow we'll again continue with the factor of safety. Clear? From this graph only, lot of things to be explained from this graph, and this is very, very basic and important. Clear? Then we'll go for the brittle material. This is for the ductile, for the brittle. Here, and we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.